Oops.
Live.
Meeting is now streaming.
Hi. Welcome, Facebook land. I'm Sara McLoudrey and...
Oh, I'm Lorena Jasis-Wallace. I work also for Synergy.
We are the trainers at Synergy Behavior Solutions, two of the trainers. We do have a third trainer, Grace Peck, who has not joined us tonight. I am the head trainer and Lorena is one of our other trainers. And tonight is our first ever trainer chat. We got a couple people to ask some questions and we're going to answer those questions. But if you have a question as we're chatting, please feel free to put it in the comments and we will watch that and get back to you as we see those questions. My dog is trilling in the background. She's a ventriloquist. So she says, why are you on Zoom at 5:30 at night? So Lorena, want to start?
Sure. I am going to be switching back between the screens here to read former questions. Just FYI, if you're watching, there's like a little bit of a lag between our recording and the live that I'm seeing. So if you post a question, we might not see it for a little bit, but we will get to it. All right, so in terms of some questions we had on our previous post, there's a muzzle question. I think that is a good question for Sara. She is our muzzle maestro.
Oh, I like muzzle maestro. It's good alliteration instead of muzzle queen, which I normally say. So the question was about getting proper muzzle fit, and you feel the person was saying that they don't feel like the strap in between their dog's eyes fits them, it rides up into them, things like that. So there are a lot of muzzles out there on the market. I think the most common one that people use and are comfortable with, and that it's the first level that we recommend, is the Baskerville Ultras. And we do recommend them because they are slightly adjustable. They come in a number of sizes, but they are definitely not the right muzzle for every dog. Lorena actually has a custom muzzle from a company called Buma's, which is overseas. And then I would also recommend, oh, we're gonna pull out, yay, there's the Buma's muzzle, awesome. The Buma's muzzles come in super cute colors and they're customizable. And there's a company now here in the States, there's actually a couple companies that make them too. One is called Trust Your Dog Muzzles, and we totally love her products. And I have a couple of her leashes. And then there's another company called Chaos Collars with 2 Ks, not Cs. And they make some also. And so definitely depending if you have a short muzzled dog, if you have an underbite dog, if you have a blocky headed dog, all those things, that's where the custom muzzles come in really handy, or little tiny dogs. I find those the best. If you have a long skinny muzzle on your dog, then there is a company called Birdwell, Birdwell, and they make a plastic muzzle. It only comes in 2 sizes, but really fun colors. And so if your dog fits those sizes, it's a great muzzle. And they have what they call a stool guard. So if you need your muzzle to have your dog stop eating things, you can put that in there to stop them from eating things. Then the other one, also more for narrow faces, is the Jafco muzzle, which is plastic. It comes in vinyl and plastic. And then there are the Dean and Tyler and a couple other companies that make wire basket muzzles that come in a wide variety of sizes. So definitely there are options. If you look on our Facebook Live tab, we did a whole Facebook Live about different muzzles, and I show all of those different muzzles. I think it's called Muzzles, Oh My, is the title of it. So definitely check there. And then if you're looking around and you're like, I don't know if this really makes sense for me and my dog, shoot us a message. And we definitely have done lots of muzzle fittings and questions. We have lots of experience, so hopefully we could help you. But Trust Your Dog Muzzles, if you need anything custom, I would go there first, by far.
Oh, Mary asked, how bite proof do you consider a Buma's type muzzle? Do you recommend them for dogs with a serious bite history or prefer something like the Jafco?
Excellent. Hi, Mary. Mary's my old intern, has her own training business back in Illinois. Welcome. The Buma's muzzles or Trust Your Dog, whatever, they can be more bite proof or less bite proof depending on how many straps and how much stuff you put in them. Like Lorena's is not super bite proof because there's a lot of openings. But you can definitely secure them more depending on the situation. But if you have a dog who is very, very determined to bite, the Baskerville Ultra is definitely not a solution because they can actually bite right through it. I would look at the Jafco or the wire basket muzzle for sure. For some of our clients who previously did fine in a Baskerville because they were with the dog at the vet office, but now because of curbside veterinary care, we've actually switched a couple dogs to Jafcos instead to make sure that they are not bite proof. I should also say that Trust Your Dog Muzzle makes custom Jafco style muzzles too. So if you have a dog who has an odd face, then please feel free to touch base with them too about that solution.
And you can see if you follow Boomus Muzzle or Trust Your Dog, although I feel like Boomus maybe posts more frequently in terms of you can see the different straps. So like a lot of the dogs that you'll see on there, there's straps filling in all of these gaps and spaces. And so obviously more bite proof than the one that I have. Okay, so next question is, I think I would like to address this question that I've been getting a lot and also talking about even when nobody asks, because all I talk about is dogs when nobody is asking. So Avery asks, I'm wondering if you two could talk about any potential long-term effects you have witnessed either through your practice or experience personally that the pandemic has had on dogs. I am especially curious about dogs with reactivity and puppies who are in critical socialization windows at the start of lockdown. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts about it. So I just want to start by saying that I love puppies and puppy training. It's my background and what I did initially. And also I do think that Portland is a little bit different than a lot of places in terms of we have a really strong dog population here and dog loving population. And we have a lot of really great positive reinforcement trainers available in Portland, which is not the case for a lot of other places. That also means that there is a lot of opportunities for puppy schools. So there's like tons of puppy socials to pick from. There's a lot of different puppy kindergartens, a lot of different like get out and socialize your puppies sort of concepts floating around. And for me personally, I sometimes find that because the average owner has really great intentions and wants to do right by their puppy, they tend to want to expose them all day, every day to things. And that's maybe not the best way to socialize a puppy anyway, because it's really easy to over socialize in those contexts and pretty like overwhelm puppies. So I think that, and this is totally not like, I don't think there's been any studies on this, but I do think that I see a lot of like leash reactivity developing in like adolescent dogs in an area like this because of the like overwhelming, like my dog needs to be friendly with everybody thing that happens. And so like that aside, when the pandemic happened and it was like lockdown, I actually did a webinar all about raising a puppy during COVID. And I was like, I think COVID is great for puppies because it means that we're social distancing and teaching our dogs to ignore other people and dogs. And yes, I think that it's obviously still important that we have positive experiences for our puppies during that time, but you should really be practicing with your puppy the behaviors you want to see in your adult dog. And so if you want a dog that can walk down the street without desperately saying hello to everyone they see, then that's what you want to practice with your puppy. So it's actually more important that the world is kind of a non-event for your puppy. And I think that COVID is actually good for that. And interestingly enough, I don't feel like I have seen any like at least at Synergy, we're not really seeing a lot of adolescent dogs. Like even you would think it would be happening now, right? Like adolescent dogs with a lot of behavior issues associated with missing that socialization. But we're actually seeing more like people who previously did not have dogs and now are working from home and went and adopted a dog. And I've talked about this before in lives that I love rescue. I'm so glad people are doing it. It was so awesome that period of time when there were no dogs in shelters. That's such a cool thing like to see because it means that there are dogs ideally in a home and I hope in a forever home. And so the issue there is that there is sort of this websites like BuzzFeed and the Dodo are always like showing these videos of like magical transformations of rescue dogs that were like horrifically abused or traumatized before. And then like a loving home adopts them. And then it's like, love is all you need. And then the dog is like fine and everything is great and it's adventuring and has all these friends. And unfortunately that narrative is not really like generally true, maybe an outlier situation. And so then there is sort of this expectation that we're going to adopt a dog and give it a loving home and it's going to be grateful and everything is going to be wonderful. And then it isn't because dogs are dogs and their previous learning history is still going to impact them even if you provide them with a safe, loving home. So we have seen a lot of dogs show up that have been recently adopted as adults. And not so much that they missed critical socialization windows, but that there were expectations in place that maybe were not really lining up with who the dog actually was and what dogs do. So.
And the other thing too, I think the only thing that I would say that we are seeing a little bit with pandemic is separation issues. I would say that's more than our reactivities. We definitely are seeing dogs that are not comfortable being left, or dogs that were maybe not comfortable being left before. And now that their people have been home for a long time, they're even less comfortable being left home alone. So I think those are two big things that we're seeing. I also think a lot of people who got puppies during the pandemic are being very conscious of that they still need to social, at least here in Portland, that they still need to socialize their puppies. So they're doing lots of good things.
And I think that the socialization that is happening is so intentional and structured that I feel like it's better, because people aren't walking down the street and meeting every dog they see on leash, which is not a good, I don't know any trainer that's like, yeah, leash greetings, like don't do that. And so they're not doing it. And I think that's great. Like puppies are going to puppy socials and drop off play dates and stuff like that. And I think that's going well. At least it seems that way. We'll see in the next year or so, right? When these dogs are like getting bigger. But one thing I want to say, what did you say about, I think people who've gotten puppies in the pandemic, I think one thing that we've seen a little bit of is, yes, that they're not practicing alone time and independence. And that's a problem. So then when they want to leave, the dog's like, we've been together for 3 months. Why would you ever leave me? So practice alone time with your dog. Even my dog, who had no really previous separation related distress, she is now demonstrating some. So, so get out there and do that. All right, so what do we have next here? Okay, so Tim is asking, so their dog Lloyd gets triggered by other dog noises or a loud sound and then wants to go for a walk. And so Lloyd's behavior, the dog's name is Lloyd, I assume, and Lloyd is tense and has his ears back and then just like tunnel vision, go, go, go on the walk. Otherwise, Tim cannot get the dog to leave the property. So the question.
And then we have another question that's really similar. So let's read that question.
Maybe I'll read both of them. Yeah, I'll read both. And his question is, how do you convince a reluctant reactive dog to go for a leisurely stroll? It's a good question. And then the other one is, I've never had a dog that needs to be coaxed to go for a walk. Libby, if me and my husband both go walking, then she's happy to come. But when it's just one person, she doesn't want to go. That's really common. And she only wants to walk her known neighborhood and city streets. She does not want to go anywhere new. These are both like the same question.
Right.
Do you want to address a little bit?
Well, I think first, Lorena and I talk a lot about meeting your dog where they're at. And so is the walk for you or your dog? And so if the walk is for you, then maybe your dog who doesn't want to leave your area should stay home and you should go on your hike. I have one client who has 2 dogs, one that likes to walk and one that does not like to leave their block. And so they do the 1 block walk with the one dog, drop her off back at home, and then they take a long walk with the other dog because that's what that dog likes. So meeting your dog where they're at, I think that's the biggest thing to start with. But Lorena can talk about novelty and a little bit about Yoshi, her own dog, and that challenge.
So a couple things that I really like the way that Tim is describing the dog's behaviors specifically. Tense body, ears back. I know that tunnel vision. I've walked those dogs where you're like, oh, my dog loves their walks. And this dog's just like eyes wide, nose to the ground, go, 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 does not eat treats, does not sniff anything, is like not acknowledging things. So a dog that is tense, ears back, no stopping to do anything but go, go, go is not a dog that I would take on a walk. So that dog is not in a space where that is going to be a positive experience for them. And it really sounds like this particular dog struggles with like resiliency and recovering from stressful experiences. So there's sort of like loud noise. Now it's like, we got to get out of here because we're all going to die. And that's not that's not a fun walk for your dog. And it's definitely not going to transition into a leisurely stroll. So we can't like walk that out of the dog. So what I do with these dogs is really go way back in terms of where we're at with training and think about, in what environments and in what interactions is my dog leisurely and relaxed and engaged? And that's where I would be training for the walks. So that means that with a dog like that, I would be ditching the walks for as long as the dog needs, so that we can work to a place where we get to meet your needs, which is that you want a dog you can take for a leisurely stroll. And it's not that there are some dogs that like are never going to be that dog. I think it's pretty rare though. The thing is that too many of us want to train in the situation that's already stressful for the dog. And you're not going to get like transformation out of that. You might get to a point where you're able to manage it and make it work and the dog tolerates, but usually it kind of steadily declines. Instead, think about training your dog at home where he or she is already feeling comfortable, and work on things like confidence and resiliency and being like that novelty and sounds are predictors of good things, not scary things. There's so much that you can do that we do at Synergy that is just all about playing games with your dog to boost these really brilliant concepts that actually lead to a leisurely stroll. So I have a dog who was one of those dogs that I thought would never be able to just go for a leisurely stroll. I love that phrase. That's great. And because it's like exactly what we want with dogs. And it's also one of the reasons we get dogs is to like go for leisurely walks. But going for a leisurely stroll actually requires like a very stable, well-rounded dog behaviorally, because you're talking about leash manners, you're talking about the ability to just bounce back from any sort of stressful experience, whether it's, you know, micro or macro. You're talking about like being bombarded by novelty and being okay with it. And that brings me to the idea of, Amrit's dog, Libby, who doesn't want to go anywhere new. Novelty is scary. Dogs are evolutionarily predisposed to be pessimistic about novelty. So, because that's how we survive. We also, I'm sure you know those people who are like, don't like change, don't like new things. But we take these animals who are, you know, just predisposed to being pessimistic, like negative judgment bias, and then we take them into our lives and want to experience life with them. And so we need to look at, okay, so Libby is comfortable in certain spaces. What if we practice novel behaviors and interaction with novel objects in the areas that she's comfortable in? So my dog is, again, similar to that. I have gotten, now Yoshi is 5 years old, and we do now go for leisurely strolls in the neighborhood, which blows my mind every time, even though it looks very boring to the passersby. I'm like, look at my dog, she's walking loose leash and ignoring your dog, which is amazing to me. But also, if I take her somewhere new, her brain immediately falls out, and it's a whole other game. So in order to work on that, I need to think of a few things. One is this an experience my dog needs to have? First of all, like, why am I taking my dog to this new place? If it's to go on like a cool hike, I better make sure that I'm picking a hike that's going to be fun for my dog. And that means meeting her needs, not mine. If it's just because I want to go visit my friend and go to their barbecue, that's where Yoshi's staying home. So you can say, my dog wouldn't enjoy that activity. And then you can do it by yourself or take a human friend. And then think about how you can start working with your dog in the areas that she's comfortable to start introducing her to novelty in a way that she has some autonomy and some ability to say yes or no. We
Also
do that
too,
in Synergy, so.
Yeah, also too, Lorena and I are huge proponents of Sniff Spot. So if you have not heard of the Sniff Spot app, get on it, especially the Portland metro area, basically from Seattle through Portland. There are a lot of locations. My reactive little guy Bueller, I don't walk him. The neighborhood walks are not stressful. They are incredibly stressful for both him and myself. He does not go on neighborhood walks, but he goes to Sniff Spots, and we go and rent out people's property and have a ton of fun doing lots of different activities at his speed and what he wants to do at those locations. So that's a great way also for your people with pandemic puppies that you want to socialize them. Sniff Spot is great. You don't have to worry about random off-leash dogs trying to take out your puppy. So definitely Sniff Spots. And someone made the comment they were afraid their dog wasn't getting enough exercise.
I wanted to address.
Yes. All right. So I'll let you go ahead and address that. Lorena.
Yeah, no, that's like such a common thing. And I actually just met this person who lives right across the street from me, and she rescued a dog during the pandemic. And it's like a challenging little pity mix, super cute. But all these people were like, your dog needs to be socialized at the dog park. And then she talked to me and I was like, no. She doesn't. And she was like, that's such a massive relief. Thank you for saying that. I was thinking the same. She's a therapist. She knows about behavior. And so that's kind of what's happening here, is that we sort of have this narrative or this story about what dogs are supposed to do and expectations. And also every single person and their uncle will tell you what you're supposed to do with your dog. And so a couple things for Libby is like, exercise, I've actually never met a dog that isn't getting enough exercise. Like, I just haven't. Most of the time, that is the go-to solution for behavior struggles, and it's not actually a solution. So I've talked a lot about this in the past. I did a live that was pretty popular called Wild Pups. There's like 2 versions of it. So feel free to check that live out on our page because it's all about exercise and why I actually think your dog doesn't need more exercise. But Sniff Spot is an excellent opportunity to get that super fun, like, go be a dog time and not have to worry about strange people and dogs. You have the entire space to yourself. So it's really great for recall training. There's fully fenced spots. There's like 20 acres of woods you can hike through. Like, it is absolutely an awesome thing to check out. Even my dog gets to go to Sniff Spots and actually play with her friends, which also blows my mind, and have really positive experiences. We don't have to worry about running into anybody else.
And someone did ask, where is the Sniff Spot? Sniff Spot is an app. Basically, it's like Airbnb for people's property. And so there are locations all over. There's one on Sauvie Island. There's one kind of up in Estacada, Beaver Creek area. There's some right here closer to town. There's a little bit of mix of everything. There's a hazelnut farm down south of here. So get on the app, sniffspot.com. We'll put a link up and check out different locations.
Let me see.
And we don't get a kickback, but I feel like some days we should.
Yeah, we need to like have some kind of partnership. They're great though. And Portland is one of the lucky cities that it's like exploded in the past year. I discovered this app like 18 months ago and there were like 2 spots and I was like, this is going to be a thing. And now it is. And it's pretty much every weekend what we do now. I don't even like mess with places that I haven't paid for. So this is an interesting question by Libby's owner also that we were just discussing before we went live, which is how do you define when barking is a nuisance that actually needs behavior training versus normal barking that is understandable? My neighbor thinks my dog should never bark, but I think they're the ones that need behavior training. I agree with you, Amrit. Sarah had some good things to say about this.
Yeah, both Lorena and I have reactive dogs and what we would a little more normal, I'm going to put quotes, normal dogs. So when Bueller, my reactive dog, barks at the door because somebody rang the doorbell, he will bark and bark and bark and bark. And then every little sound makes him bark again and his bucket is overflowing and he's just out of sorts. Rizzo, my dog that's sleeping over here on my shoulder, she does bark at the door. She'll be like, bark, bark, the door rang. And then she's like, oh, okay, whatever. And she can be distracted and doesn't really care about it and goes about her day. And I think that's the difference is, can you interrupt that barking? Can you redirect it? Can you give them something else to do? If you cannot easily do those things, then that would fall into nuisance barking in my world. We have a Google spreadsheet for our clients that have a lot of barking reactivity issues. And one of the things that the questions on there is how easy was it for you to redirect your dog during this barking incident? And that's a big reason to think. And yes, dogs are allowed to bark. That's how they communicate. And there's lots of different barking too. My dogs have lots of different types of bark, play barks versus warning barks versus stress barks. And Lorena and I are talking a lot of times when people get complaints about barking, it is unbeknownst to them that their dog is barking because when they're not home. And so a lot of separation, distress, or they're being left in their backyard and being bored. So my rule is if my dogs are barking in the backyard, that means they must want to come in, even though it's not what they want. They're usually barking at squirrels, but I don't want to bother my neighbors. And I do have a neighbor that lets her dog stay outside for quite some time barking, and it makes my reactive dog super anxious, even inside the house. So I think their dog is also reactive and probably does not appreciate my dog barking. So we bring him in.
Yeah, I usually try to talk about the differences. Like both of my dogs are reactive in some ways, which I think every dog is, to be honest. Like if the dog isn't reacting, they're dead. We want reactions, but maybe not like overreactions. But both of my dogs can overreact in certain situations. But one of them, my older dog, who's definitely the more like optimistic, chill dude, he, if somebody comes to the door or he sees somebody out the window, he might go boof, boof, and then he like relaxes. Although as he gets older, might be starting to change, but generally that's his default. But my pit bull, she loses her mind and she thinks that a serial killer has arrived to kill everyone she loves, and all of her hair goes up and she could go. And so a lot of that has been working on her she doesn't like novelty. And so a lot of working on her ability to go up and then come back down. So that's sort of like, thank you. And then she's like, okay, I can do it. Even though in the past, we had to work through that. So I think that is the difference. Is your dog barking? Because like dogs bark. So your neighbor is
right.
But also like, is your dog barking and clearly distressed? Then I would be wanting to work on that because that's, there's an emotional component there. But if your dog is barking because they're like, woof, there's somebody here, and you're like, cool, and they're like, all right, and they go back to sleep, that's what dogs do. I do want to throw something out, two comments from folks who are watching who are amazing clients of Synergy.
Yes.
Natalia, about Skittles, you said it took her like a year to wag her tail, and that just like my heart, I feel so happy about that. And love that dog. You've done such a great job with her. She's asking though if it's weird that Skittles hasn't barked. I don't think that's weird.
No.
Especially given, what Skittles has experienced in her life. Totally not super surprising. I would say that is a good problem to have.
Yes.
And then Jessica Spanos did say, our dogs got pretty chubby when we stopped doing regular walks. We're still trying to figure out how to exercise them effectively. Yeah, so that doesn't mean that I don't think dogs should get exercise. They absolutely do need it, but fitness doesn't necessarily have to be aerobic and intense. So like I do a lot of fitness in the house in terms of working on things like fit paws and working especially on my pit bull's like rear end because she's got some weird hind leg situations. So we do a lot of fitness stuff that isn't necessarily like walking or running. But Sniff Spot is a great opportunity to get some of that energy out and let your dog be a dog, whatever that means. And then but not necessarily have to expose them to their triggers. So. Okay, so a couple other questions. People are putting them in the video now. So our puppy is about 7 pounds and 9 weeks. Oh, 9 weeks. Okay, cute. What advice do you have on the kind of harness and that's a good question. On the harness and collar we should be using. Also, do you believe that he should be on leash in the house at all times? If so, for how long? What do you think, Sarah?
I think it's so. Oh, Rizzo's in a mood now. We are past dinner time. So I think actually that I'm probably going to kick Rizzo out of my office for the moment while I talk and let her go and bother my rest of my family. And then I think that open floor plan living has made puppy raising challenging. And so if you have an open floor plan that you cannot easily gate and cannot easily manage to be able to watch your puppy, then having your puppy either on a leash, a tether, in a pen, I think is very, very important. Yep, I don't feel that they need to be attached to you 24/7. I think that sometimes can, with the right temperament, can create some hyper attachment issues. Not all dogs, just some dogs. But I love waist leashes for puppies because you can have them on you. You can attach them to the foot of your oven. You can attach them to the table. You can do lots of different things. So it helps manage their behavior and their potty training. And that is the main reason why I would do that. And then harness, or do you have any comments about the leash in the house, Lorena?
Yeah, I think it, so normally I would only recommend, like, if you mean like a leash dragging, yeah, I think that can be good, especially for as you edge into adolescence. That will be nice for you to have, so that you can step on it or grab it if you want to stop rehearsal of a behavior. And also if you happen to have other pets. So I think that for people who have cats or something, if you're working through your puppy not reacting or chasing these animals, I think that can be helpful. But I'm not a big fan of like umbilical training, I think it's called, for the same reasons that Sarah said. But I think that there's a lot of different ways to work with, a puppy that work for people. In terms of, yeah, I'm a much bigger fan of like an exercise pen, a crate, gated system, situations that you can rotate your dog through safe confinement, and then they only, they come out for training, for potty, for play, and then back into their safe confinement. I'm more interested in puppies getting enough sleep and also practicing being away from you, even when you're visible or in the other room. In terms of harnesses, yeah, collars are for tags. So collar, yes, and also when your dog is on leash, they should be in a harness, especially a puppy. And we have done lives on harnesses where we actually show all the different types. We are a big fan of harnesses that are a Y shape. not across the chest. So there's a lot of harnesses that a few years ago, maybe like 10 years ago, were like super popular with the new front clip design, which are cool. I like front clips, but I don't like the ones that go horizontally across the dog's chest because it restricts their shoulder movement. And especially for puppies who are still developing, we don't want to do that. So look for a well-fitted Y-shaped harness. We talk about like different brands and options in our harness live. That's a great question though. Mallory said, this is just a comment that she made that I like. Sometimes when I'm ditching the walks, I run up and down the stairs a couple of times, knowing the dogs will follow me. Good exercise for me and them. I love that. That's cool. Interesting topic or question is how to understand when meds might be helpful or necessary. I personally had a hard time making that decision and knowing when training could only take us so far. I guess I think it's highly personal for that dog, but I wonder if there's any general advice you can give. Yes. What do you think?
Yes. And actually this goes into our other person that asked a question about their dog that cannot relax at all, which I know is my friend Lynn. So hi, Lynn. And hi, Mallory. So when are meds right? So I have Bueller is on medication, Lorena's Yoshi is on medication. I find it helpful when your training has stalled out. So if you feel like you've hit a plateau in your training and you're doing a lot of work and it just isn't getting better, I think that's a indication that meds might be helpful. I think Lorena always says too is when you're working real hard, like owning a dog should not be so much work. That's a good one. And I think the biggest thing that we see too is people with young dogs who have pretty clear fear issues. They're not going to outgrow them statistically. And they are very hesitant about trying medications and help with a veterinary, and it maybe not medications, maybe something else, but consulting with the veterinary behaviorist, because the dog's so young, either A, they'll just grow out of it, training's just going to help, but there's definitely some situations where the sooner the better. I think traditionally we have, as a dog training community, used to say medications were the last resort, and medications should never be the last resort. They almost should be the first resort to help training work better, I think is a good way to explain it. Lorena, do you have?
Yeah, I agree. I think that when we're talking about dogs with even very young dogs with extreme fear behaviors, those don't go away. So that is definitely a time when I would be like, let's look at, medical intervention. And then also my former employer once said that she's a dog trainer, obviously, and she said, I usually tell my clients to talk to their vet about medication when the dog is having more than one severe reaction to multiple triggers a day. So I think that that's like, it's nice to think, and it doesn't have, that's in no way like a medical
Right.
threshold. I just thought that was a really good way to sort of like clearly tell the client, this is what I'm seeing. And I see that it's going to be so much, like all the work that you're doing is going to have so much more effect if the dog is able to have generally lower anxiety and a higher threshold for stress. And that's what a lot of medications can do for your dog. And I used to be somebody who was actually like super anti-meds. I've done a whole 180 in the last couple of years, and I'm happy to like geek out on that a lot. I think it's really important. And I absolutely wish that more people would seek out a qualified veterinary behaviorist and medication before they get to the end of the line, which is unfortunately like a lot of the clients that we see are people who've been to all the other dog trainers, and then they come to us, and I'm like, man, I wish you'd come to us 3 years ago.
Right. Or also too, we have a lot of clients who inquire about us, or we'll see in their veterinary records that their vet has recommended us like 6 months, a year, whatever, sooner. And you're like, oh, we could be so much further along if, we understand that everybody takes time to get to that place. And I think sometimes dog trainers themselves are the worst, to be perfectly honest.
And I think it involves a paradigm shift also, in understanding like the perspective of what a vet behaviorist does and why medication, it's like a whole like social stigma around medication in general, I think. And that's like a conversation that should be had. I do want to just point out, so Christine asked a question and we didn't get to it, but she had to go clean up her cat's vomit. So now we can answer it. She's back. So What about a dog who is super reactive to sounds that can't be heard from the human ear? I have to take my dog out on a leash in the backyard as he is obsessed with looking in my neighbor's window and barking at them. Oh, I gotta love Yoshi's one of those dogs that just needs to solve the mystery and know what's happening. Very stressed about things that she doesn't know about. He will suddenly go from 0 to 10, excessively pulling to the point that he is essentially clotheslining himself in the harness. I end up dropping the leash as he has a sensitive neck. He will come back and check in with me after he does his crazy run around to the gate, which I have visually blocked aside from the gaps between the posts. Wow, you are doing a lot of really incredible management, Christine. I want to like commend you for that and give you some positive reinforcement because that does sound like a stressful situation. And
that answer we just had about meds, I think is
so that's an example where maybe you'd want to talk to a vet behaviorist or a veterinarian, because it does sound like, so one of my like personal mentors and a vet behaviorist that I really respect once said, imagine that you are somebody who's afraid of clowns and like a phobia of clowns, and which is of course like irrational, but phobias are, and you are in a crowd. And if you see a clown, you have an intense reaction. That's like pretty normal and typical because that's a phobia. You see the thing, you have a reaction. The problem is the people who are in the crowd and are constantly looking for the clown. That's not there. So I would say that it sounds like your dog is maybe a little bit of looking for the clown. And that means that there's a general level of anxiety that I would find like a little bit concerning. And so I'd be like, I feel like I want to see what else is going on. And maybe that's not a super typical behavioral response. And it seems like you are doing a lot of really great management and it's not getting the results that it should.
I know that Lorena has to get to class soon.
This is really fun though. I'm glad we did.
I know. We clearly have to do this again. Maybe we should do it once a month or once a quarter or something like that. So I know there's going to be some questions that we don't get to while we're chatting here, but that we will take a time, probably not tonight, but in the next day or so, we will respond to your questions in the chat. So please feel free to do that. One of the questions I want to answer really quick, because she asked it in my last Facebook Live and I didn't get to it then because I didn't see it until after I had signed off, and she's a good client of ours. Janice has a newly deaf dog who as he's aging and has had some health issues, he's gone deaf. And she really liked the idea of the 1, 2, 3 pattern game that we talked about on our Facebook Live last week. So go check the live tab to find out what that's all about. And she wanted to know if we had any ideas on how to do that with a deaf dog. And I'm actually going to see if Lorena off the top of her head has any ideas, because I have some, but.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, my first thought was a tactile counting. So like tapping in a particular spot. I usually will do like a, I really like touch markers for deaf dogs, not just the visual marker that people do or whatever. I really like a calming touch marker, especially for working with like reactivity. And so I would maybe be thinking about like a tap like on the shoulder, maybe if your dog isn't head shy, like on the top of the head. I think that you could probably also do like finger counting in front of your dog's face, like right next to them, just down like 1, 2, 3, boom, treat. I think that would be super cool. I love that question. That like gets us all creative and like how do we make sure that things can be accessible? I like that. There's like one other question about for Steph Furry about Kongs, etc. We can drop a few resources in the comments because we do have to go because I have a class soon. But this is super fun. Thank you all for joining us. We had like a good crowd and some really, really interesting questions. So we will definitely do more of these. And thanks for being here.
Yes, thank you so much. Please feel free to check out our lives. We do lives most every Tuesday and Thursday. So check those out. We also have lots saved on the live tab. And yeah, we're definitely going to schedule another one of these because we can hopefully get some more of these questions answered. And we look forward to you joining us again. Once again, I'm Sara McLoudrey.
Lorena Jasis-Wallace from Synergy.
And we'll talk to you soon.